With FireRed and LeafGreen back on Nintendo Switch, that old magic is hitting all over again. Choosing your starter, building your team, and heading out on a classic monster catching adventure, that formula still works, it still grabs people, and it still brings back that feeling of discovering a whole world through the creatures you train. But what if there was a game that captured that same old school feeling while also feeling smoother, fresher, and more built for modern players? That's where EvoCreo 2 comes in, and honestly, it might be one of the most interesting takes on the monster catching formula right now, because the moment you look at EvoCreo 2, you can tell it understands exactly what people love about this genre. It understands the thrill of that opening choice, it understands the satisfaction of slowly building a team that becomes your own, and it understands that a good creature collecting RPG is not just about catching monsters, it's about going on a journey. That's why comparing it to FireRed and LeafGreen makes so much sense. Those games are iconic because they nailed the basics. You pick your starter, step into a bigger world, and from that point on, every battle, every catch, and every major win feels like part of your own adventure. It's simple, but it works so well that people still talk about it decades later, and now that those games are back on Switch, it reminds everyone why that structure became so timeless in the first place. EvoCreo 2 taps into that exact same energy. Just like in FireRed and LeafGreen, one of the first big hooks is choosing your starter. That choice matters because it immediately creates a connection between you and the game. It stops feeling like a story you are just watching and starts feeling like your run, your team, and your journey. That part never gets old. There is something special about beginning a monster catching game with one creature, a little bit of hope, and a whole world ahead of you. It's one of the most satisfying setups in RPGs, and both games understand that really well. But this is where EvoCreo 2 starts to separate itself. It doesn't just borrow the familiar feeling and leave it there. It actually builds on that old school foundation in ways that feel more modern. And one of the clearest examples is how it handles rivals. In FireRed and LeafGreen, you mainly have that one iconic rival, and that setup is classic for a reason. It gives the game a strong sense of personal competition. Every time they show up, it means something. They're there to push you, annoy you, challenge you, and remind you that you're not the only one trying to become stronger. It's simple, direct, and incredibly memorable. But EvoCreo 2 takes a broader approach. Instead of relying on just one rival dynamic, it gives you more than one rival character to bounce off throughout the adventure. That immediately makes the world feel bigger. It feels less like a straight line between you and one specific opponent, and more like you're part of a wider cast of characters, all moving through the same world in different ways. That change may sound small on paper, but it actually makes a big difference in how the adventure feels. It makes EvoCreo 2 feel more alive, more social, more dynamic, and that is a very modern strength. A lot of older monster catching games were built around very simple character structures. That worked at the time, and in many cases it still works now. But modern audiences often want a little more from the world around them. They want more characters, more interactions, and more of a sense that other people exist in the story beyond just being obstacles or battle checkpoints. EvoCreo 2 seems to understand that. It feels like a game made for people who love the old formula, but also expect a little more from the full experience, and that really is the best way to describe it. EvoCreo 2 feels made for a modern audience while still keeping that old school spirit intact. That balance is not easy to pull off. A lot of games inspired by classic monster tamers end up leaning too hard in one direction. Some are so obsessed with nostalgia that they recreate old frustrations along with old charm. Others modernize everything so much that they lose the personality that made the older game special in the first place. EvoCreo 2 feels like it lands somewhere in the middle, and that is exactly why it stands out. It still has that classic 90s style feeling in the way the adventure is portrayed. There's something about the structure, the presentation, and the overall vibe that feels familiar in the best possible way. It has that start small and grow stronger energy. It has that sense of heading into a creature-filled world and gradually building a team that starts to feel personal. That's the kind of feeling people remember from older handheld RPGs. It's not just about the mechanics, it's about the atmosphere, the rhythm, the comfort of knowing the setup is simple, but the journey can still feel huge. EvoCreo 2 seems to capture that really well. At the same time, it doesn't feel stuck in the past, and that's important because when people say they miss old school monster catching games, they usually don't mean they miss every outdated design choice that came with them. What they usually mean is that they miss the feeling, they miss the sense of discovery, they miss choosing a starter, finding new creatures, battling rivals, and slowly shaping a team that feels like their own. They miss the soul of those games. EvoCreo 2 feels like it understands that distinction. It feels like a game that wants to preserve the soul without preserving all the friction. That's a smart approach, especially now with FireRed and LeafGreen back on Switch. More people are naturally thinking about what made those games so special, and once you start thinking about that, games like EvoCreo 2 become really interesting because they show that the monster catching formula still has plenty of life left in it. It just needs to evolve in the right ways, and EvoCreo 2 seems to do that by keeping the heart of the classic formula intact while layering in more modern features and a more current sense of pacing and presentation. That matters a lot because for many players today, it's not enough for a game to simply remind them of something they used to love. It also has to feel good to play now. It has to respect their time. It has to feel smooth to get into. It has to feel like it understands what modern players expect from progression, from storytelling, and from overall game flow. That's where EvoCreo 2 appears to have a real advantage. It has the familiar DNA, but it doesn't feel locked to the past. It feels more like a modern interpretation of why that formula worked in the first place. And honestly, I think that's why this comparison works so well. FireRed and LeafGreen are classic examples of the monster catching RPG at its purest. They represent the formula in a form that helped define an entire era. They are the reason so many players fell in love with this kind of game to begin with. EvoCreo 2 feels like a game that takes that same core idea and asks, how do we make this feel fresh again for people today? Not by throwing away the old structure, not by pretending the classics don't matter, but by understanding exactly what made those games memorable and then building on that foundation. That's what makes it feel more than just inspired. It feels intentional. You can see it in the way it uses the starter choice as a big opening hook. You can see it in the multiple rival setup. You can see it in the way it aims for that retro tone without feeling dated. And you can see it in the overall package, which feels designed for people who still want that old school adventure, just with more modern sensibilities around it. That's a really strong lane to be in. Because there are a lot of players who love the idea of going back to something like FireRed and LeafGreen, but they also know exactly where older design can feel limited. They love the style, they love the structure, they love the nostalgia, but they also want something that feels a bit more current, something a little broader, something a little smoother, something that still gives them the starter, the battles, the rivals, and the team building, but packages it in a way that feels made for now. That's where EvoCreo 2 seems to win people over. And another thing that helps a lot is that it has a demo on Steam. That is a huge plus, because with a game like this, the vibe matters almost as much as the features. The pacing matters, the feel of exploring matters, the way battles flow matters, the way the world comes across matters, and a demo gives players a chance to see right away whether that blend of retro charm and modern design really clicks with them. That's a very modern advantage too. Back in the day, a game had to win you over through box art, screenshots, or word of mouth. Now players can jump in and feel the tone for themselves, and for a game like EvoCreo 2, that is probably one of the best ways to make its case, because once you see it in motion, the comparison becomes a lot clearer. This is not a game trying to hide what inspired it, it's a game confidently building on those inspirations. And I think that confidence is part of why it works. It knows the starter choice is a powerful hook, so it leans into it. It knows rivals help make the journey memorable, so it expands on that. It knows people still love the old school adventure vibe, so it keeps that feeling alive. But it also knows that modern players want more than just a throwback. They want something that feels polished for the present. They want something that feels like it understands both the past and the current audience, and EvoCreo 2 really seems to sit in that space. So in a lot of ways, FireRed and LeafGreen and EvoCreo 2 are doing two related but very different things. FireRed and LeafGreen remind people why the formula became legendary. EvoCreo 2 shows that the formula can still grow. That's what makes it such a good comparison. One represents the classic blueprint, the other feels like a modern evolution of that blueprint. And for players who love creature collecting RPGs, that is a very interesting place to be. Because the appeal has never really changed, people still love choosing a starter, they still love building a party, they still love discovering new creatures and figuring out which ones fit their team best. They still love rival battles, progression, and that steady feeling of becoming stronger as the world opens up around them. That emotional core is still just as powerful now as it was years ago. The difference is in how a game delivers it. And that is exactly where EvoCreo 2 stands out. It delivers that old school feeling in a way that seems more aware of modern expectations. It feels like it was built for people who want the spirit of a 90s style monster adventure, but don't necessarily want it buried under older limitations. That's a big reason why it feels so relevant right now. So with FireRed and LeafGreen back in the spotlight, EvoCreo 2 ends up being a really compelling game to look at alongside them. It has the familiar starter pick, it has the creature collecting journey, it has the rivalry and progression, it has the retro heart, but it also has more modern features, more than one rival, and a stronger sense that it was built for a current audience, and that might be the best way to sum it up. FireRed and LeafGreen are classic comfort food. They remind you why this kind of game became so beloved in the first place. EvoCreo 2 feels like a modern game made by people who understand exactly why that comfort still works. It keeps the old school feeling alive, but presents it in a way that feels smoother, more current, and more naturally suited to the way people play today. And that is what makes it one of the most interesting monster catching RPGs to watch right now. And if you like this video, hit that like and subscribe button. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all on the next video.